Welcome back to #Fempire, the podcast that brings you the stories of women leading change in policy, politics, and beyond. Today's guest is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to municipal government. She even has a nickname to prove it. She knows the systems inside and out, and she's working hard to make sure local communities aren't just heard, but truly represented where the big decisions get made. Meredith Staveley-Watson is the Director of Government Relations and Policy at the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, where she's been championing rural municipalities, communities, sustainable infrastructure, and better funding models for years. From her early days as a policy analyst at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario to advising municipalities across the province, Meredith has built her career around making government work better, especially for those often left out of the conversation. She's smart, strategic, and fiercely committed to using policy as a tool for real, lasting change, all while rocking a badass power suit. And here's a fun twist. We're Queen's MPA twins, having met during our Masters of Public Administration days. So let's dive into the world of municipal politics and policy with the one and only Meredith Staveley-Watson. So Meredith, thanks so much for joining us and coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia. Very excited to be here with you and the Fempire audience today.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. You're doing some seriously amazing work being the voice of municipalities and businesses across Eastern Ontario. And can you just share with us a little bit about what your role is and who the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus is?
Yes, thanks, Julia. So I work on behalf of 103 municipalities across Eastern Ontario. And the EOWC, the Wardens Caucus, is basically like that one advocacy voice for the region's small urban and rural municipalities. Across Ontario, there's actually 444 municipalities, plus the City of Toronto. And so we represent almost a quarter and have been around for about 20 plus years now.
Very cool stuff. And I think, like you said, small, rural, those places often, I think, get forgotten sometimes out of the conversation because we think of the big cities like Toronto, Hamilton, Ottawa. So I'm also curious, like, what pulled you into this space in the first place and what sparked this interest to work with municipalities?
Absolutely. It's definitely unique. And I remember when we were actually at Queen's Center MPA, I got the somewhat embarrassing nickname Municipal Meredith when everyone was applying to the federal internships or the provincial ones. And I was really focused on the municipal space. I kind of initially fell into, I got an internship to the Chief Administrative Officer, Jim Pine at Hastings County. That's in Belleville. And I really got exposed to a variety of issues and opportunities. And I tend to get bored a bit quickly if I'm too focused on just one issue. And so I really like the municipal sector because it covers such a broad range of issues and initiatives and services. So that could be like asset management and infrastructure. I've worked in municipal finance. It could be around social service and paramedics, broadband, or even my personal favorite I learned a lot about was cemeteries, randomly enough. So there's just a lot of variety, and you can really see your ideas and work come to life. It's the government closest to the people, and you see that impact in your communities and, of course, for me, across the region of Eastern Ontario.
Wow, really well said. And you're right, it covers so many different aspects. So I'm curious as well, what would you say your day-to-day biggest issues are right now with the municipalities? Because one big theme that comes along in my podcast is what don't municipalities do anymore? This concept has really changed and evolved over the years as more responsibility and burden's been put onto them, but they do take the lowest taxes as well. And I can understand there's might be a challenge between balancing allocating critical services, like you mentioned. We talk about anything from day-to-day life and what it impacts for people. So yeah, I'm just curious, what are the big issues right now on your desk?
Well, Julia, you're doing a great job for me in advocating for the municipal governments across Ontario and Canada. So municipalities' scope of services that they cover and scope of work has broadened and broadened over the last 100 years, but we still have a financial framework between the federal government, the provincial and territorial governments, and municipalities that is over 100 years old. So we've modernized, but our financial frameworks have not. And so this puts municipalities in kind of a burden situation. They're like businesses. Municipalities have to balance their budgets every year, unlike the federal and provincial governments. And so it puts us in a position to have to almost beg, if you will, for grants or not be able to plan appropriately for big projects like roads, bridges, or wastewater treatment plants, etc. So our partners at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, and AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, as well as the EOWC, where I am, are really looking for this new deal, new financial framework with the new federal government, as well as our Ontario government. So we've got some good signs with the new prime minister. So hopefully this opens the door to some of those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm totally like with you on that. I value my community so much in my municipalities. Like I grew up in my libraries, I grew up in my community centers. So it's really a lot of critical infrastructure and social services offered by municipalities. So really great work. But I do want to lean in a little bit more into your job title, being the Director of Government Relations and Policy. When people hear government relations, I feel like their mind maybe goes something out of West Wing or Veep, these slick power suits, intense boardrooms. But you're on the municipal side, so maybe some people's minds go straight to Parks and Rec. But I'm curious, like, what were your misconceptions before jumping into this world? And what kind of reactions do you get when someone asks you, what do you do? And you tell them that you represent Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus.
I have to be honest, I love a good power suit. So maybe government relations has always been my calling. I try to bring a bit of extra fashion maybe to the Eastern Ontario rural communities and encourage my board members and colleagues to do the same. But I think around this, it can be confusing. I think our education systems perhaps could do a little bit of a better job explaining the differences between the federal, provincial, and municipal systems. I tried to get it down to be fairly short. So I usually say, my name's Mayor and I work for all the mayors across Eastern Ontario, if I try to keep it short. And funny story for you actually is one time someone asked me if I liked working with horses because, of course, they related mayors to horses, which is ridiculous. So I had a good laugh out of that and always enjoy telling that a little bit, but regularly get asked, what a warden is. And of course, that's the head municipal elected official or politician for counties, which are upper tier municipal government. So that's something a lot of people want to know what that is. And so I always have the pleasure of explaining that, which is no problem. But yeah, just to answer your question a little bit more, I see government relations as really bringing awareness and information and solutions to common problems that we're all facing and evolving problems as we're seeing really across Canada today. So
Yeah, absolutely. And because policy and government relations go hand in hand, what kind of policy do you find that you're putting forward to represent those interests? Because you're balancing different municipalities, which have different interests. How do you, whether it comes to bringing a cohesive vision for the jurisdiction, or if you're just putting forward different policy recommendations and doing research, like how does that all come together for you with that policy lens?
yeah, it's a great question. Well, as we've already discussed, we definitely take, of course, a focus on Eastern Ontario and that more smaller community, more rural lens. So that's something that covers all of our policy portfolios and recommendations. We do focus on kind of those municipal services. So right now we have a 3-year strategic plan, which has really helped me in driving and executing relationships and partnerships. And so right now we're really focused on economic resilience around trade and tariffs and how it's impacting our families, businesses, communities on the ground and keeping those whole. And we've also been able to promote the sectors and the opportunities across more rural areas. Like in Eastern Ontario, we actually have 46% of the agricultural jobs across the province, which is something that I learned in our recent research. So we've been able to pivot and really take that economic perspective, which I think everyone is doing right now. We also focus on municipal infrastructure. As you pointed out so kindly, Julia, municipalities are responsible for the majority of infrastructure, but receive the least amount of tax dollars. So that is a really big focus on it for us. We want to make sure our roads and bridges continue to operate. This can be particularly challenging in rural and small communities because for the same kilometer of road, there are that many less residents to pay for it. I know I'm originally from Prince Edward County and we get a lot of tourists every year, which is fantastic, to the beach and the wineries and all that good stuff. But it puts an additional burden on our roads and bridges. And so, again, why we're advocating for a new financial framework.
Really good points. And I do love Prince Edward County. I go up to Sandbanks almost once a year just to enjoy the camping out there. And like you said, the wineries. And there's so many elements. Every municipality, I think, what I love about Ontario has that unique characteristic. I was also in Midland a few weeks ago for the Butter Tart Festival. So really fun little thing. And I want to shift the conversation a little bit because we're obviously on Fempire here. We got to put a feminist lens to everything we talk about. But you raised with me a really interesting organization and initiative called Elect Respect, which was launched by Halton's Council, led by Mayor Marianne Mead Ward. And it's focused on supporting women in leadership across the region. And the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus is set to consider that pledge at their upcoming AMO conference. How do you see this movement gaining momentum beyond Halton? And why do you think EOWC wanted to be part of this conversation? Is there a specific, I don't want to say agenda, but is there, I guess a moral agenda that they wanted to be part of this movement and have this conversation more?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we were recently in Almont at a summit, and this initiative, Elect Respect, came forward. It's an incredible initiative, and I congratulate Mayor Mead Ward and her Halton Council colleagues for launching it earlier this month. And it's really to take a stand for women in politics and women who want to run, but maybe have doubts, which is, again, very fair. So it's vital to have initiatives like Elect Respect as they show solidarity and a certain standard of behavior that we want and that we want to elect in as Canadians. And it's, for me, I felt very inspired because it's a way for us to stand up for our respectful democratic values. We definitely need systems and career environments where women and marginalized groups feel safe to work and safe to live. And the Elect Respect pledge shows the support across all parties and all levels of government and in our communities, of course. So I spoke to my chair, who also happens to be a woman in politics, Warden Bonnie Clark from Peterborough County. We talked about this and we're very excited to bring it to our board for consideration. It's really timely, actually, this year, and you can find it on the EOWC website or the AMO website. But across Ontario, it's the first year where all of the heads of our political municipal organizations are actually women. And also many of the lead staff, executive directors like myself are also women. So I think it's a pretty important year to showcase that. And we also want to encourage that to continue for the municipal elections, which are coming up in fall of 2026.
Wow, really well said. And I love that this initiative is being brought to the forefront, especially given the economic kind of uncertainty we're experiencing. One of my last guests, Marwa Abdu, she's a senior researcher at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and we talked about a lot in her research of having more women in leadership and senior positions, the economic resilience and economic opportunity that can bring to that and bring to our spaces is so huge and undervalued. So it's really great that we're seeing initiatives like Elect Respect to have more women at the table, but even, bringing this and collaborating with people within your organization. So it's really awesome to hear, Meredith. And I do want to lean into that point a little bit more, but, given your experience in government relations and public affairs, why do you think it is important to have these sort of initiatives like Elect Respect that support women in public service and elected office?
Oh, I could go on and on about this, Julia. It's again, it's all about women need to feel safe and also need to visualize themselves and see themselves in these positions and also feel like they have that support and resources and allyship like around their council chambers, around their work environment. So this is a great way to show that solidarity, as I said, and support, and also a way for organizations like municipalities or other, this could really span across all different types of nonprofits, for profit, or government organizations to put resources in place and provide support that is so needed to women and marginalized groups when they are brave enough to put their faces, their values, their families out there. So there's lots more information on the HER Halton website around Elect Respect, including the pledge itself. And I encourage organizations and also men on councils to be vocal about this pledge and stand alongside their female counterparts for this.
Well said, and we'll be sure to link that in the show notes too if anyone wants to read about it further. And I feel like what comes to mind as well as we're talking about elevating women, amplifying them, the power of mentorship is really huge. I think, especially for women, as we're navigating complexities and dynamics of the workplace, salary negotiations, switching sectors, climbing to more senior positions, and even just getting our voices out in these leadership and elected official positions. It's so important to have that supportive network to lean on and bounce ideas off of. And I want to ask you, like, how have you personally worked with mentors and experienced the benefit of mentorship throughout your career? And if there's any advice you can share to women who are looking or trying to find a mentorship, maybe things that they want to look for in a mentor.
Oh, yes. Mentorship, in my opinion, is the very best thing you can do for yourself when you're starting out in your career or you're going through it. I've been so fortunate with the EOWC. I started with them, I think I was 23. And I've really grown up with a lot of the staff, the CAOs and the elected officials. So I really owe a lot to that group. I also think you can maybe find mentors in a less traditional sense. I know in my case, my family's been wonderful mentors to me, like my grandmother, my mom, my dad. My grandma was actually one of the first women who worked full time at the Canada Revenue Agency in the 1950s, which was extremely rare at that time. And, we were talking about kind of allyship. My mom led a movement in high school to have the high school girls to be able to wear pants and jeans at school, which I know we can't even fathom now. I definitely like my jeans. And as you're talking about also like men coming on board with supporting women, my dad was the captain of the Waterloo rugby team, but also took women's studies classes in university and owns his own business and has supported women in their careers throughout. So I think you can find those values within perhaps your family, your friend groups, where you volunteer, your school institutions, and also apply them and look for them at work. And I've just been so lucky. I think too, like not being afraid to ask people out one on one for coffees and being creative. I actually signed up for a wonderful mentorship program with the Association of Municipal Clerks, Treasurers of Ontario, AMCTO, a great resource for listeners. It's a free mentorship program for people in school, fresh out of school, new in their careers. And I got linked with Michael Fenn, who's a incredible leader in the municipal sector. And it was still kind of COVID times. And I was thinking about, oh, how should I engage him? It's probably a little bit, boring for him to talk on Zoom, perhaps. So I ended up finding an event at the University of Toronto around the Institute of Municipal Finance and Governance. And again, a free event. So I asked if he'd be interested in going. And we ended up going and getting to know each other much better. And he also was able to connect me with very senior leaders at that event. So it ended up being a wonderful experience overall. So I just encourage people to get creative with how you would want to be engaged and really wanting to listen to people and their stories.
That is so cool, Meredith. I didn't even think of like inviting someone to another event because I think we've gotten in that regimented of just hop on the Zoom call, which is good. It's a first step, but that also goes beyond the coffee chat and going to an event that you're both going to be interested in. It's almost an easy conversation starter. So that's a fantastic idea. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And again, I'll also be sure to link AMCTO if anyone's interested in it because it sounds like a fantastic resource just for
Yeah.
people to be engaged and talk. And I also want to commend your grandma and your mom for some of that amazing work they did back in their time because, I mean, I think we forget. It's not so distant, but we do forget how long it was before women could vote, before women could wear pants or be able to work in the public service. Like, it's so wild to think that these are still people and generations we have the wisdom we can talk to. It's really remarkable. And I want to ask you as well, Meredith, with your mentorship that you mentioned, and also just being in the government relations space and having a master's in public administration, how have you seen the space shift over the last few years? And, with everything going on in today's economic and political climate, do you think those of us working in policy and government relations need to rethink how we approach engagement in policy development?
I think it's just constantly shifting, and that's what makes it really fun and challenging all at the same time. So, obviously, we're seeing a big shift. I never thought I'd be looking at things on such a global scale that we are now. We've really been focused on the Ontario lens, working with the provincial government, but now we're looking international, really, even across North America and into kind of how can we build our region's connections and find synergies and partnerships across the chair and I actually went to Milwaukee the other month for the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative conference where we signed a memorandum of understanding with their organization, and they're really focused on preserving the Great Lakes across borders, so in the US as well as Canada. And so that was a really exciting initiative that I never thought we'd necessarily be involved with, but really makes sense given this time. I think also in government relations now, it's a bit like a puzzle, and you've got to find where your voice plugs in and where your solution can align with and help push maybe the larger agenda of Canada or of Ontario. And so I think that messaging is always changing, and that perspective on a policy can shift with the government of the day or just with the economic and social shifts.
Very well said. And yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the more that you chat with organizations and associations, that global element, because it's not normal times, it's not normal business. How are we contributing to the broader economy and to support all Canadians? So, really good stuff. But I do want to ask you, what are some of the most significant policy changes you've contributed to throughout your career? And what did you learn from those experiences?
Yes, I mean, I feel like it's hard to think of those big pivotal moments. I still feel like I'm early in my career to some degree, but again, I think it's about partnerships. And for me, some of the things that I've led have included, I kind of just brought one up, but that memorandum of understanding with the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. So building shared dialogue, resources, and really advocating for our Great Lake. It's something that not one government or company has control over. So it really, to me, showcased the power and importance of prioritizing that and doing that together in a meaningful way. So that's something that I feel really proud of from just the past couple of months, and being able to be a leader and have a voice in that arena and connect our smaller communities to something bigger than our own city or town and even our own region.
Yeah, really well said. And I think the Great Lakes, they are just so big. Not to like minimize it. I mean, the name lives up to it, but I think it is such an important infrastructure for energy, for use, for transportation, right? Like it's just, I think, an endless piece of different pieces of the puzzle, as you were mentioning. So really cool that you got to be part of that. And as we're just wrapping up here, I do want to ask you, what advice would you give to any young professionals looking to build a career in government relations and public affairs?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Julia. I think one of the best pieces of advice I received from a mentor a couple years back is, Meredith, you have to see yourself and act like a director, not like a butler. And I was like, what do you mean by that? Like, what does that mean? And it's like, you can't just jump at every ask. Or I think too, as women, we definitely aim to please. And as we grow in our careers, you're always used to proving yourself and saying yes to things. And I'm definitely that type of person. I get excited about projects or I want to help and be responsive. And it's not to say not to be those things, but it's also important to show up in the leadership role that you aim to be or are just starting out as, especially as a younger woman, especially my sector or many of the listeners as well. So, yeah, that has also helped with if people find they experience imposter syndrome. I've really found that line and being able to visualize and then carry through those actions and also delegate accordingly in transitioning and moving up in my career. That has been a piece of advice that has been so helpful. As we already talked about as well, Julia, just finding people that you trust and have those mentorship conversations. And just don't be afraid to reach out and find creative ways to engage them. People want to talk, they want to talk about themselves, their experiences. And also don't forget to thank those people when they take the time and the energy to respond to you or edit something or share information with you as well. I think those would be my biggest pieces of advice. And then lastly, I will say this, just look for ways that you can volunteer, not in the traditional sense. Maybe you have a job in the public sector, private sector, and you really wish you were working on another file or supporting a bigger group. You could offer, like I did when I was younger, I'll take the minutes for that. I just want to come and listen and learn. It's very unlikely that you will be told no if you're showing that interest and willingness to contribute. And that's actually what I initially did for the EOWC. It was never a paid position. I just volunteered and it grew and grew and grew. So if you can find those creative ways within your organization or outside, volunteer for a conference, a summit, a day, and show up. And that's how you can meet your next mentor.
Very well said. And I'm totally on that same wavelength. That's how I've gotten most of my opportunities through life is just volunteering, raising my hand and showing that just genuine curiosity and interest. And yeah, to your point too, you don't have to jump on every opportunity, but find things you're interested in and lead them through that. So I think those are all really good points. And one of my last questions here, I'm also curious about, Meredith, is looking back throughout your career, is there any advice you give your younger self just starting out in your career? Maybe knowing what you know now and all the experiences you've had, is there anything you'd maybe wish you'd done differently or something you'd tell yourself to keep in mind as you're going through this journey of life and career searching?
hmm I think don't be afraid to ask for what you want. I think obviously that takes time. You have to build those relationships, that trust, and you have to prove yourself. But don't be afraid to ask for what you want and bring those ideas forward. People appreciate when you're keen, hopefully, and when you're excited and you show that passion for something. So I would really say that is something. And as we've already discussed, like visualize who you want to be. You don't need to have like the perfect job lined up. Like I still don't know who I want to be when I grow up. So it's okay not to know and not be certain, but have those values and have that visual of how you see yourself and how you want to see yourself in the future. And every day, just take a step towards that. And I think, again, that piece of advice about, show up as the director, not the butler, is again something that is in my ear often.
Yeah, really good advice. And I also think too, like the visualization piece is so important. I think on social media is a lot of manifesting, but that visualization piece, even just going back to our earlier part, but like you want to visualize down to the point of what power suit you want to wear. And I think it's so important that you usher that confidence in, and confidence comes with time, it comes with experience, but you have to know your skills and what you bring to the table. And I think if you're able to do that, you'll shine, you'll find the right people, they'll orbit towards you. So I think it's all different, really great pieces that we've covered here. And I really appreciate that advice because I think hindsight's always 2020. I look back sometimes in my early 20s, I'm like, why did I do that? Or, I get why I did it, but I would have been a different person now than I was before, right? And like I said, life I feel like is a journey and you kind of just got to be open to things in the universe, whatever it throws at you, whether it's career wise or personal. So, I mean, a lot of good stuff we covered here, Meredith. So I do want to throw it to you. Are there any other closing thoughts you want to share with the listeners? We did cover a lot, so open forum for you.
Yes. I think too, in my fashion, being an advocate for the municipal sector and working it, and we've talked about this at school. I know Julia too, like really consider looking into it. There's lots of opportunities. And I think too, as like a policy wonk or going to your master's, like there's a lot of really interesting advocacy and policy that you can work on that you're not sure. It's more than what you think. And you can really lead that change and it can move a lot faster than perhaps at different orders because there's less bureaucracy. And not to say that bureaucracy is a bad thing, there's an absolute reason we have that and it's so important. But again, it's been a really someone who likes to move things quickly and has ideas and likes to see them come to life. I really think it's a great sector and government can be great if we work well together on things that matter and keep communities and people in mind. So thank you so much for having me, Julia. It's been an absolute pleasure and I look forward to chatting with you soon.
I want to thank you, Meredith, for all this really great insight. I really appreciate your time and your experience because that's why I built this podcast. I really think everybody has a story to tell, even though we sometimes don't think we do. But I think you're doing some amazing work at the municipal level, but also bringing a feminist and advocate lens to the work you're doing. So we love to see it. And that was Meredith Staveley-Watson. She's the Director of Government Relations and Policy at the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. And we had a fantastic conversation. If you liked what you heard here, make sure to tune in next week for my next special guest on #Fempire. And we'll catch you there. Thanks so much, Meredith.
Thank you.